Oh, there you are. Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Hey, man, thanks for joining us today. I know you're super busy, man.
That's okay.
Appreciate you making time in your day.
No, it's fine. Forgive me. I just flew into Minneapolis here for one of our clients on the Vikings, Harrison Hand. So let me just get buckled up here, and I'm all yours.
All right, awesome, man. Well, I think we have a pretty good quorum already. I'm just going to introduce
Good.
you. I think for those of you who don't know who Chris Cabott is, Chris is one of the few NFL, what you would call a super agent. He's president. I'll just start off with that. But he's
You're
president
sweet,
and
man.
COO of Steinberg Sports and Entertainment, which is one of the largest in their industry. He handles top NFL talent, including Tua Tagovailoa, who's going to be coming here to Miami shortly, as well as Pat Mahomes, who just signed the biggest contract in sports history. So,
And don't forget
uh,
about South Florida native Jerry Jeudy.
oh, there you go, Jerry Jeudy. Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's a big one. So, obviously, Chris is at the very top of his game. We're going to be talking about NFL and COVID today, so it should be interesting to hear your perspective as to what the future holds. I know there's a lot of question marks about, preseason, regular season, safety. So I'm going to start a little bit about just talking about you and your success, because obviously you've been ultra successful at a very young age. What do you think have been
Keep that young thing going here.
the
That makes my
well, we'll say
grays
what,
and my crow's feet feel better.
I mean, not yet for sure.
Oh.
What does it take to become a high level sports agent, and what do you attribute your success to?
I have any success in this world, it's because of God's grace and the people that I was blessed to have in my life, that He put in my life, from my parents to mentors to friends to family. Um, I think as an agent, you have to be adaptable, hence me driving while we're doing this, which I didn't expect. But I got a call that I had to be out here, and here I am. So I think the biggest thing about being an agent is you're in the service industry. You're serving others, you're helping others, you're taking care of others. And that is something that I enjoy. I think I'm kind of a servant leader naturally. And I just love helping people make a difference in their life. I mean, that's the reason God put me in this earth. And I enjoy that tremendously. So I think as long as you're willing to put others ahead of yourself and work hard, have a plan for them and help them advance their goals, I think you're going to be in a really good place.
That's a great message to hear. I mean, you got to be passionate about what you do, and you got to
Mm-hmm.
love what you do first and foremost.
Absolutely.
How do you feel like, what has been the key to you landing top NFL talent as opposed to other agents? What do you think separates you from other people in order to land people like Jerry Jeudy, Tua Tagovailoa, and obviously Pat Mahomes?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just the agent industry and the word recruiting. The word recruiting in general is something that's very unique and very personal. When you look at why do athletes go to certain colleges and things like that, because there's a dynamic, unique fit there. And it's the same thing here. There's a unique fit. Um, I love getting to know people. It's probably my favorite thing about this business, meeting new people, getting to know them. And for us, it's really three things. It's plan, trust, and synergy. Have a plan for somebody, earn their trust, and then have a synergy where folks just genuinely like each other. So we're very detail oriented, we're very plan oriented. We are blessed to have the chairman in Lee Steinberg, who literally created this industry. And Lee's principles and architecture are things that I followed very early in my career, always admired, and they're part of everything we do today. We have an incredible staff of 12 people, and just really saw the earth folks. Julia Farron, our VP of Media and PR, is second to none, top in the planet in what she does. Selwyn Roberts, who's also an agent, director of web development, is an ace with anything digital. Matt Steinberg, our director of football operations, is a true savant. Ian Hill, our director of social media, is excellent. Joanne Brown, our director of brand partnerships, is excellent. Mariah Haynes, our director of operations, is fantastic. Juliana Rubin, our assistant director. Safet Bichen, our assistant director of football operations, and Jordan Jordan Hickman, our director of creative content. If you enjoyed Jerry Judy's announcement yesterday, If you enjoyed Patrick Mahomes' announcement of when he signed his contract, Jordan did both of those. So we just have a really great team around here that I'm very honored to work with. And Ishmael Lawrence, we can't forget Ishmael. He works with us, and he does a fantastic job.
Well, awesome. I mean, it's all about team. Obviously, you can't do it alone.
No.
Before I get into the COVID, just one more non-COVID question, which is, if you look at sports salaries over the last 20, 30 years, they've certainly skyrocketed. What do you attribute that to? Is it the fan base? Is it the media? Is it the TV coverage? How come athletes' salaries have gone up tremendously over the last 10, 20, 30 years?
It's primarily the TV deals, because you're getting more and more exposure there, greater rights fees, etc. It'll be interesting to see what happens with some of the new deals that are being done with the Amazons and some of the bundling and some different streaming, things like that. I only expect media to go up. Now, in the NFL, the salary cap is likely going to be flat for a number of years because of COVID, and we're going to have to borrow from future years to keep things flat so players don't take a dip in salary. But, obviously.
So that's interesting. I just want to focus on that a little bit. So let's start off by saying, how has the pandemic affected you and Steinberg Sports and Entertainment before we get into the players?
For sure. We've been blessed. We've been lucky. We haven't been impacted that much. We've had a draft on time. We had free agency on time. Our endorsements have been on time. Our players have reported on time. So we've really, really been lucky. God really put his hand on us in the football world. Our CBA got ratified and extended early. So we've been lucky. We've been fortunate. The first time we'll really face any potential interruption is what happens in the next few weeks.
That's great to hear. Now, what about the players and their salaries? You were kind of hinting at the fact that if the revenue for these teams go down, how do you keep the player salaries where they are?
Yeah, it'll be borrowing from future years of the salary cap. The salary cap's going up usually about $10 million a year, and what'll happen there is you'll borrow from future years to keep it flat, make sure the folks don't dip. Now, here's what I will say to you though: the teams get the luxury of, if they have any cap money that wasn't spent, that cap money rolls over to the next year. So the cap this year was $198 million. If a team didn't spend all their cap money last year, whatever they didn't spend rolls over to this year.
Oh, it rolls over. Okay.
That's not going to happen next year. Oh. So for most teams, they're going to be in a deficit, and it's going to be flat, but you're not going to have the virtue of rolling over. So it's essentially going to be a deficit. So there's been some folks out there who have been suspecting and anticipating and kind of banking on a big boom in salary cap in 2022. And that's likely not happening.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a scenario where it will. So I think that's something that veteran players in particular, in being strategic about extensions and future deals, really have to think about.
So you don't think the salary cap is going to boom, but you also don't think players are going to take a hit in salary because of the rollover and borrowing from future years?
As long as we can have a season and borrow from future years, things will be flat. If there's a cease in season, if there's a shutdown, there will be a reduction in compensation. Now, the union is working on that, basically in a stipend situation that would give players partial revenue. So it won't be totally out, but there could be a reduction if the season's canceled. Super
interesting topic. Let's just get a little bit more into that, and then we'll talk about the actual season itself. So do you think it's similar to baseball that has a 60-game season? They're getting paid prorated. If NFL plays 6 games, 8 games, are they going to get a third of their salary or half of their salary based on the number of games they played, if, like you said, the season is ceased?
That's to be determined, but there's going to be there are scenarios that are being discussed that could be along those lines.
Yeah. Now, looking forward to the NFL season, obviously that's like America's biggest sport in terms of fans, revenue, all that stuff. How is the NFL preparing for the 2020 season in light of the pandemic? I heard there was maybe no preseason. There was a rumor of that.
That's true. There's no preseason. The NFL and the NFL Players Union agree there would be no preseason. The reality of it is teams have gone through a very stringent protocol and policy to try to make the buildings as safe as possible, to have as much COVID testing as possible. The union has cross-checked that, double-checked that with the medical community, and it's been determined that it's safe to start. I think that obviously what you're going to see is a lot of COVID testing. The way this all starts is it starts with a test. If a player passes the first test, and in 72 hours they have to pass another test, and once they've passed that, they can begin practice. If they haven't passed both tests, they have to quarantine. So that's just the initial run of it. It'll be very interesting to see how those COVID tests go. Obviously, football is a contact sport, so there's close proximity. But I will say this, I think the league and the union have done an excellent job getting it in as safe a place as possible to get back to work for where we start now. There's no question that it's a one day at a time type thing. Best case scenario, we'll start a season probably like baseball, like basketball, without fans. And obviously that's going to be subject to state and local law. So God willing, folks continue to wear a mask, folks continue to boost their immune systems, folks continue to distance, and we can get through this thing.
Gotcha. Have they talked about how often they want to test the players? Is it every week before the game, so that maybe on Saturday, so on Sunday, someone doesn't have it before they play? Or
Sure. So I mentioned to you the initial screening, and then it's going to be weekly once we get past that. And then before games, there's a process where your players are going to get tested before games as well. That's one of the reasons why an extra quarterback spot was permitted for rosters, essentially be on the practice squad, but available to be called up in any second for that. You saw the Chiefs add Matt Moore. They brought Matt Moore back to essentially be that guy. Obviously you can't have a scenario where your quarterback gets ruled out, 24, 48 hours before a game, and you don't have someone that is experienced behind him.
Yeah.
By the way, I just want to say hello to some friends. Ishmael Lawrence, I see you. Stadium, I see. Christian Sicoli, I see. Thank you guys for joining. Doctor is tremendous at what he does, and it's an honor to be with him.
Oh, awesome. Well, listen, man, thanks, dude. I appreciate it. Do you feel like football is more affected than other sports because of the contact nature?
Oh, I do. There's no question. Obviously guys are in close proximity. I think baseball obviously is probably the most distant sport of them all. Hockey's a contact sport. Obviously basketball, you're playing close to each other. So there's no question that there's a lot of contact there.
Now, what about different positions? A lot of the ID doctors, a lot of the specialists say that the linemen who are continually running into each other and are literally inches away from each other's faces, the linemen are most at risk, whereas the skill players like a wide receiver may not be in such close contact. Do you think that the linemen should get extra testing, any special precautions?
I think there's no question that you're going to have to keep an eye on your linemen. You're going to have to keep an eye on everybody, but for the reason you just mentioned, there's more concern there. Another thing, too, body mass index is one of the, I won't say pre-existing conditions, but something that we, has been something that folks that have a high likelihood of getting COVID, the higher the body mass index. Now, obviously, for the average person, you're talking about obesity as a function of body composition, body fat, whereas with an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, you can have a 300-pound guy with 6, 7, 8, 10% body fat. So it's different that way. But nevertheless, your linemen are probably the most susceptible of the athletes on an NFL roster. We've got to take care of them. We've got to protect them. And I think the league and the union have put together good protocols to do that. But something they have to stay on top of. And I send this message to society. I this morning got on for red eye from Los Angeles to Minneapolis. It was my 60th flight in pandemic. And God willing, I've been in great health. But I do a daily immune booster, and it's apple cider vinegar and elderberry syrup in the morning. And then I do 3 liters of water with greens and with 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C. I do vitamin D. I do oregano oil, and I do at least 15 minutes of sunlight. I know it sounds ridiculous, but the body can't absorb the nutrition without that. And I'm a big believer in preventative maintenance. Even with our guys in training, you have to do preventative work on injuries to keep yourself healthy. And I think all of us as a society have to do that. I put out my little concoction on my IG story from time to time, and it's just the sort of thing we have to wear masks, we have to sanitize, we have to keep our hands clean, we have to stay away from people. We just have to be smart here. If we're all smart as a society and as a world and as a planet and as a community, we'll get better. We will get better here, but it's a committed thing. That's my Gettysburg Address.
I mean, just like you were saying, I think sleep, exercise, and
Yep.
diet,
Yeah.
those are the three most important things. And you can do whatever you want about washing your hands, wearing a mask. But if you're not sleeping, you're not eating right, and you're not exercising, it kind of defeats the purpose. So, but back to your clients, because I know that you have a very special relationship with your clients.
I do.
Are your clients scared about COVID? I mean, there's definitely athletes who have come out and said, we're not cool with this. We're scared about the season. We don't want to get sick. You don't have to mention names, but do you have clients who are like, look, Chris, I really don't want to play this year?
There's no question that we're all concerned. Those first few flights I took, I was terrified, to be honest to God. I was terrified. I think as time has gone on, the fear has worn off. As more information has come out, the fear has worn off. As more tests has come out, the fear has worn off. Nevertheless, I have clients that have young children, and they don't want to take any risk that they're going to have a young child that's going to grow up without a father. And I can't blame them for that. And if there are any clients that want to opt out, I support that. We haven't had anybody say that yet, but if that were to happen, I would have to support them fully. I think obviously for guys that are maybe on a 1-year contract or the final year of the contract and nothing's guaranteed, maybe they're at a minimum level salary. If they're a veteran client, they've been wise with their money and they have kids and they have families, they're more likely at a spectrum where they're saying maybe opting out makes some sense. So like I said, we haven't had anybody say that yet, but there have been some concerns and some fears brought up. And look, when more than 500,000 people around the world have died, it's hard to argue with that.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, on that same spectrum, how do you think this pandemic might affect players who are in contract years, right? So you're in your final year.
Sure.
The year may or may not happen. If it does happen, it's going to be obviously a very odd type of year. What do you tell your clients who are in contract years coming up?
Well, here's what I'll say to you. If you're a veteran, I think you have to understand the climate that's a result of this pandemic. For guys that were, and by the way, contracts and contract extensions are a very personal thing. They're very unique to the client. They're very unique to the client's families, to the needs. Something Lee always talked, one of Lee's core principles, listening. What's important to someone? Why does this matter? And I think in veteran free agency this past year and in guys looking at extensions versus franchise tags, the cap's not going up. The cap could go down. The cap hopefully will stay flat, like I've talked about. If a player said, I'm not taking the extension and I'm sticking with a franchise tag, you're really betting on yourself for a couple years. And the reality of it is on that, you're not putting yourself in the place of guarantees for long-term guarantees for injury or anything like that. So what I would say to athletes in the NFL, really educate yourself on the cap, really educate yourself on what's going to potentially happen with the economics of the cap, and make decisions accordingly. I'll say this too. I think that there are a number of players that could be up for an extension that they're going to have to consider if the team hasn't made them an offer and they're not committed to the player, and the player's in a situation where maybe they have young children, things like that, they may have to consider opting out. And I think in some cases that may become a degree of a negotiation tactic, or not intentionally, but just by default.
Yeah.
Because you got to think about that. You can't put your family at risk. You can't put your kids at risk. You can't put your spouse at risk.
Yeah, it sounds like things might get a little messy there. do you think there's going to be a college football season? I know that's a little bit outside your expertise, but it's
Okay,
still in the same.
sure. No, I think there will be. I think you could see the sort of thing where it starts later. You could see maybe start in October. It could just be 6 games, 8 games, things like that. The amazing thing is so much of our national economy, I think even more than folks realize, is dictated by football, pro and college. And we're in a situation where, and I'm not saying this is the full thing, but and this is not a political statement, this is totally an economic statement. Our national debt continues to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And it's been balled up primarily by China because of trade and whatnot, but China is starting to reach a saturation point on how much debt it can buy. And as a result of that, you know, I think there are pressures to get on with football for economic reasons, and that has to be balanced with health and safety. So we all have to be very honest with ourselves. We all have to look at every factor. We have to keep our athletes safe. We have to keep our coaches safe. We have to keep our front office safe. We have to keep our staff safe. And at the same time, there is a push for the economic reasons. Obviously, you can't balance one against the other, but I think there's a strong push to have a college season because of that.
Yeah, I mean, what would you say? Let's say that the NFL season doesn't happen, or it only has 1 game or 2 games, and someone has it. There's an outbreak. Everyone freaks out. What is the financial impact in terms of numbers, a general number of if there is no NFL season? How many hundreds of millions, or shall we say, is it billions that are lost?
For the NFL, for the salary cap and whatnot?
Yeah, if there's no season, how much revenue is lost for all the
projected
teams? What was that? I'm sorry.
It's a projected $2 billion loss. It's a projected $2 billion loss. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I mean, clearly it's the whole opening up versus staying closed in the economy argument. Health versus economy. Obviously, there's a big driver there. And then just the last couple of questions here while we end it. What do you think about people who say that having the NFL season is not morally right? People are dying. It's a pandemic. Why are we putting these players at risk, right? These people are not commodities. These are human beings. They have families. Why are we even putting them at risk? Whereas we're asking other people to work from home, don't come in. What about the moral background of this decision?
They're right. There's no two ways about it. I was on a call with players a couple ago, and I won't say the player's name, but he's a very well-known player in this league, and he said, we're not essential workers. And he's right. Nevertheless, it's a personal decision, and I think that the union and the league have done a good job of creating an opt-out program, an opt-out situation.
Yeah. Well, so your final statement, you think there will be an NFL season, but perhaps shortened?
I won't say that just yet. I think it's a day-by-day thing. It's one day at a time. Obviously, we're looking to open up on the 28th for everybody. Rookies have reported early. I'm in Minnesota today. I have a client here who started camp. We'll see how it goes. I think the union, I think the league have spent a lot of time putting good safety measures in place, been very diligent there, and prayers that the contained protocols that the NBA has put together, where you haven't seen any COVID positive tests in a while, I believe. God willing, that carries over the NFL, and just God willing in general that as a society, people take this thing serious. People sanitize, boost their immune systems, wear a mask, social distance, whatnot. I mean, at the end of the day, it's we the people, right? It starts with us with this thing, and we have to be smart there. So I have flown a lot because I have to, not because I choose to. And I try to be as safe as I possibly can, both for myself and for other people. So, and I've been tested, and God willing, I continue to be negative, and I've had my temperature checked almost every day. I kind of like those guns. I like when they turn it sideways at me like that. It's always kind of fun. But yeah, no, it's important.
Yeah. Well, listen, Chris, I won't waste any more of your time. You've been amazing.
You're not a waste, man. You're a blessing, and I appreciate you. And listen, I appreciate what you do for our world. I appreciate what you do in the neuro world. You're obviously one of the top docs in the country and the planet. The heroes and the MVPs of the pandemic have been folks like yourself. So thank you for your service, and thank you for all that you do.
Well, awesome, Chris, man. All right. Make sure you stay safe.
Yes, sir.
And have a safe flight back home. Okay.
All right, my man. Continue blessings
All
to
right,
you
dude.
and yours. God bless.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Bye-bye.